Welcome to 44 and 1. I'm GVizzle and this is Tempest. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
I'm just going to start making with the jibber jabber. So I have not, I guess TikTok curates my For You page. The algorithm works really well because I don't get a lot of Steve Crowder videos in my feed, and I don't engage a lot with social media. So I've known of him and who he is and what his belief structures are, but I've never engaged with his content. But he has been everywhere the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I've been watching him for about 5 or 6 years on YouTube. So, like, because I engage with different media sources, so I can actually find out what the actual fucking truth is to anything. And Crowder was one of the ones that I watched.
All right, simmer down.
Yeah. Well, because everyone has their own axe to grind, don't they? And they're like, so I've been watching him for quite a while. And this stuff about him allegedly being abusive to his wife in that ring footage, like, that wasn't that surprising to me, given that I've been watching this guy on screen for 5, 6 years. It was like a case of, oh, no, that fits. I could,
I saw some of the clips out of order. So I saw the ring footage after I saw him talk about like how he was surprised that in Texas, one person that he can't keep a hostage, essentially, is what he was saying. He was saying that unlike, like, I don't know why he thought that a divorce would be different than any other breakup. Like, it only takes one person to break up. So I saw that one first. And after hearing that and then seeing the ring footage, I was like, oh, that makes sense.
But he's a religious conservative. So, like, politically, he styles himself as a right-wing libertarian. But I don't see much commonality between him and I. Like, but then again, I'm more center than he is. But there's not much liberal in him to be a libertarian.
No, and the little that I've heard of him, it's definitely not. Like, he definitely reads as Christian conservative.
Yeah.
And I've read some comments where people are looking at the ring cam footage and being like, well, that's just conservatism and that's Christian, but it's not. Like that type of behavior transcends religious and political affiliations. That was just shitty behavior.
Yeah. When we get into the clip in a minute, we could point out some of the stuff of why people are trying to argue that that's just a traditional conservative family. But actually, it's some of the stuff he's saying and doing is really problematic. And it's almost trying to use religious conservatism by saying, well, I've got to be the strong man in the family. I've got to be a hard ass or whatever. And it's like,
but you know what, like, if anybody's watched more than one episode of Leave It to Beaver, that was a very conservative traditional family. And not once was Ward mean to June. Like, like those old school shows, like, there was definitely the man of the house dynamic, but you never walked away from those shows feeling like, oof, I didn't like it when Ward told June to watch it. Like,
exactly.
I never went down in those.
Oh,
like, that's
fuck you up.
Yeah.
Never said
Mr.
that.
Mr. Cunningham never said that on Happy Days.
Yeah, so politically, I think he's very much a conservative. Religiously, he's very much a conservative. So he doesn't believe in divorce. Like, he doesn't think it should happen, that once you get married for life. And then, which is why he disagrees with no-fault divorce. Because you essentially can hold a hostage. And so for a bloke, if a man was abusive and had that mindset, then all you got to do is play the game until you get them married. Then you can lock them down and they can never leave, which is why divorce exists, right?
And this is why a lot of people, like what a lot of men did, like they didn't get shitty until afterwards. Why would you want to continue to be married to somebody who very clearly doesn't want to be with you? Like,
people find ways out of it. Like, if you want to get divorced, if you want your relationship to end so you can both live your separate lives, even if divorce is illegal, people will find ways of doing it. In the United Kingdom, I can't remember when this was, but they had this practice of people would sell their wife at market because divorce wasn't allowed. So, like, the last recorded one that I know of is that the couple wanted to split up. She was in love with another man. So they did this whole show thing of, like, he took her down to market and then sold her for like a guinea or something to another bloke because his wife wanted to leave him and be with another man. And
I think in Brazil, femicide is a growing problem because when women want to or try to break up with someone, they just get murdered.
It's a growing problem in the West too, I think.
If I can't have you, no one can.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think there's also a lot of ego to it. Like, how dare you leave me?
Yeah, yeah.
I think part of it, that's part, that the vibe I get hearing Stephen Crowder talk about it isn't so much that it's a biblical thing. It's a like, what? Oh, me?
Yeah.
This magic?
Yeah, 'cause they got married when they were 25, and because of like even from a young age, he was Christian conservative, so he hadn't been with anybody else or anything. Like, so for him, the stakes were high. That like, no, I'm being with this person, and we're just together forever now. And then I think that can mess people up psychologically once they think that like, I'm never going to lose this. This is locked in now. Then that.
But I think that's what people go. Both sides go into marriage thinking that, right? Like, I don't think anybody goes into marriage with one foot out the door. I think in instances like this, especially for Christian conservative men, because they know how they are planning on treating their partners, right? So for them, in their version of Christian conservatism, it's, I'm the man of the house. You're going to respect me. You're going to do what I tell you to do. I'm going to control the finances. I'm going to control everything. So of course they're going to want that to be forever, because they've got a built-in homemaker sex bot mother. Yeah. So why would they? If they have in their heads that women are supposed to be subservient, they're not supposed to share their thoughts or opinions or really have any goals or ambitions outside of the they've got it fucking made. For the woman in that scenario, she may think that's what she wants until she's in it. And then she's like, oh, I have to beg my husband for the keys to the car to go buy our family fucking food. Like, once you're in it, it's a very different perspective. Yeah, if you're on the shit end of the stick.
Because if you don't have your own money, you can't then hire a divorce attorney. If you don't have your own money. She doesn't even have
keys to the family car.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, they can afford for her to have a car. Not only does she not have one, she doesn't have the keys to his car. So they have to go through this charade of, please, sir, may I have some more? To get the keys to buy groceries.
Yeah. And of course, like, this does happen the other way around sometimes, but this is a predominantly male on female problem.
Absolutely.
Massively.
And
so.
when it is the other, it's not, people don't, when it's women who are the head of the household in that instance, being the abusive party or demonstrating the behaviors of an abuser, it's not from religious background, right? Like there's that moral indignation and that self-righteousness that comes from thinking you've got God behind you, where women don't get that.
Well, I find it quite interesting with this whole women shouldn't work thing, because I've gone on a bit of a tangent here, but it's just such an archaic perspective that's never existed until I think quite recently, because back in the Dark Ages, men and women were egalitarian, and they were, like I've said before, they were constrained by technology. But everybody, like certainly in the working classes and the peasant class, people were all in it together. They all mucked in together, and then they were pretty much equal but they still were confined by gender roles. But then in the families where they weren't confined by gender roles, women had a lot of responsibility. I think it was Edward I's wife, one of the Eleanors. I always think it's Eleanor of Aquitaine, but it's not. She was a fucking landlady, and then was a really ruthless land baron who would like send her bailiffs around knocking on doors, getting her money from the upper classes, their rent money.
I think a lot of it kind of stems from this classist or classism, because like there's always been, even before there was the thought of women entering the workforce, if you were pale, you were the aristocracy because you didn't have to spend your days working in the sun. If you had naturally curly hair, you were trash. But if you had straight hair and had the money to curl it, you were the elite. So there's always been things to differentiate, like even nail colors of nail polish were used to differentiate people in different classes. So I think at some point, as soon as the men of the house could afford to maintain a household on one income, it became a symbol of status, right? Like, look how well I'm doing, that my wife doesn't have to work and I can support this family. And it was perhaps a show of like, oh, look at Tom's wife has to work because he's not a good provider. So I think it came into that where when women got into the workforce, it was like, oh, wow, shit, 2 incomes are really fucking handy. It's amazing.
Yeah, around World War
I. And now it's going back to, I think as women start to try to reclaim more independence and more power, men are starting to feel a little bit emasculated by that. So they want to go back to that time where, no, I can support This is how I'm going to be manly and show that I'm a good provider, is to have my wife working from home. I knew a couple where the wife wanted to work. She was willing to go work, but the husband really enjoyed being able to say, I have a housewife, like I have a stay-at-home wife. That's how well I'm doing.
Jesus Christ.
So yeah, she wanted to, and he was like, no, because then people are going to think I don't make as much money as I do. Like, it was, for him, it was a show-offy thing.
Oh man, God, that ego. Yeah. Let's load up this ring footage then. I showed it to my partner, right? She got less than a minute in before she actually got, like, I've never seen her so angry at something she was watching. She's a very reserved person. She doesn't really show emotion, but she was livid at this.
Because often when you see that type of thing portrayed on TV, it's fiction, and you're like, oh, they're just actors. But this was real life, and that makes it a little bit harder to swallow.
Yeah.
I drew a boundary. I drew a boundary. No, you just did it. I drew a boundary of abusive and cruel. You are not taking the car. Because if you refuse to do wifely things, then I will go pick up the groceries.
There's no groceries. I'd be happy.
Steaks, wood pellets, my grill. I know it's an unreasonable request, but I'll go do it. How about you first? Hillary, how do you respect a man? Yeah, how do you man? How do you man? I see love and respect. No. How do you man respect? No, you're not taking the car.
Steven,
You're not taking the car.
Steven,
You are not.
then I will ask someone to pick me up. Who would you like me to ask?
Oh, that's right.
It's not about Steven.
Give it an Uber.
Okay, Steven, I can't.
Feeling some constraints?
Steven.
Like, I can't go. Listen to me. You want to walk out right now? Listen to me. I can't go to the gym. I can't go to my parents. I can't call my friends. I can't be home. You're going to take the car and leave me here. Hillary, just think of how boxed in you've made me.
What do you need me to pick up? I'll get it. I'll be back when I'm back.
No, that doesn't work either. You'll be back when you're back. That doesn't work either. Do you understand the difference between my life being set to the second and you're going to be back when I'm back?
Steven.
And then the only way out of this is discipline and respect. It's the only way out of it, or we're at an impasse.
We are at an impasse.
Good. Because you can't have any discipline or respect. Yeah. There you go. You throw your hand, you give up so easily.
I don't give up, Steven.
You give up so easily. I just said the only way out of this is discipline and respect. You said, then we're at an impasse.
Steven, no, we are at an impasse, okay? I love you, but Steven, your abuse is sick. Your abuse
Watch it.
is sick.
Watch it. Fucking watch it.
I'm gonna let go. I'll get what you need me to get. And I need some space. We need to just stop engaging for a little bit, okay? I love you. I love you very much.
I don't love you. That's the big problem. I've never received love from you, and the fact is, when I go, look, I need you to do A, B, C, and D, you just be disciplined about it, you go, no. But I love you more than life itself. Okay. Put on some gloves. No. But I love you more than life itself. That's not fair. That's not fair, and it's disingenuous. Hillary, you're right, we're at an impasse. Become someone, as you did, day in and day out, worthy of a wife. No, not as a wife. I didn't say as a wife. Hillary, come on now.
I'm not gonna engage. I'm not gonna engage anymore. I'm gonna go. I'll text me what you need. I'll get you what you need. I love you. I'm committed to you.
Put on some gloves. Are you committed enough to do those things?
I'm not trying to.
Are you committed enough to do those things? You're not committed to anything. You're not committed to anything. You just said I love you. I'm committed to you. Walk the dogs. Put on some gloves. Walk the dogs. Put on some gloves. Are you committed enough to do those things? Are you committed enough to do those things? Are you committed enough to do those things?
I'm gonna just
walk the dogs. Put on some gloves. Are you committed enough to get the medication the dogs take? No, you take Betty.
Whoa. So yeah, that was stressful to watch.
That poor woman was so exasperated.
So
like,
what I'm quite interested in, I think, before I say my thoughts on it, how did you, like, because obviously I think where we're both, I'm a man, you're a woman, we probably had different experiences watching it. So talk us through how you felt.
I also come from, and this is something that I don't share often or lightly, but I also come from an abusive family background. So that type of thing is, it kind of stirs up some feels. But that is not, his behavior is not how you behave towards someone that you say you love. That's not how you treat someone you love, especially, the mother of your children who's currently 8 months pregnant. When you are in a partnership with somebody, and that's I guess the problem is that he's not seeing it as a partnership, right? Like he's talking about, she needs to prove that she's committed. She needs to have discipline and respect. She needs to be worthy. She needs to show her commitment by like put on gloves and go out. Like she needs to respond to his every whim. He is treating her like she is the family dog, that when I tell you to sit, you sit. When I tell you to stay, you stay. She doesn't have any autonomy. She doesn't have her own, like I said, she doesn't even have the keys to the fucking car. So every time she has to go to the grocery store, she has to go through this whole charade. If you really loved someone and you respected them as your partner, you want to go through life with them side by side together. So you don't want to make things difficult for them. You're not throwing up boundaries for them. When your 8 months pregnant wife says she wants to go to the store, you give her the keys to the car. You get her own car. You can afford it. And then his whole, well, what if, get an Uber? What if I want to go to the gym? I can't go to my mom's. I can't see my friends. Why can't he, like, he's not even providing options. Why can't he take the Uber? Why can't he drop her off at the grocery store and then pick her up afterwards if he needs the car so fucking badly? Why can't she drop him off at the gym and then pick him up? Why, like, there's just, it is all, that whole thing was about exercising control, because even when she's trying to give him options, the way he said either, it's not about that either. He was like a petulant 16-year-old throwing a hissy fit because he wanted his toy to act in a certain way and it wasn't acting in that way, and it was pissing him off. And then when she was just like, he says she gives up so easily, but she hasn't given up so easily. This has been years of this type of treatment that has finally led her to a place where she's like, I just can't. That's not giving up easily. And you shouldn't take pleasure in doing that to your partner. You shouldn't be setting up these tests for them to demonstrate their commitment of like, oh, forget feeding our family. Go put gloves on and walk the dogs. Go get the dog's medication. And then when she's like, I can't do this, he's watch it. What, like threatening. That is threatening language that he's putting out there. And then he's like, I don't know why she's forcing me. I don't know why we're not making through this together. Like, he claims to be religious. And I Googled Bible quotes. Let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let this wife see that she respects her husband. She has respected him for their entire relationship. He has never loved his wife the way he loves himself, because you do not treat people that you love in that way. You don't make it difficult. You don't threaten them. You don't make everything about you, because everything was about him. She wants to buy food. He's like, well, what if I want to go out? What if I want to go to the store? What if I want to see my mom? Figure it out. You're a grown fucking man.
Get on the push bike.
Just like discipline and respect. Like, how are those words that should show up in a marriage? Respect, yes, there should be mutual respect. Discipline, I'm disciplined every day in that I walk the dogs, right? Like, that's the level of discipline, not my husband disciplining me or vice versa. That's not how you treat people you claim to love.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I think we both share most of the same views. I was wondering as well, like, what did you think about how she tried to diffuse the situation? Do you think, like, in your opinion, how do you think she handled it?
That she handled it like an abused woman, right? Like, if my husband spoke to me that way, because we've never been in an abusive relationship, I would be like rolling up my sleeves. I'm like, let's get this fucking fight on. But she was trying to appease him with words that she thought would soothe the bear to try to just get through. Like, he very much had the demeanor of someone who is just exhausted and exasperated and just trying to get through it. So it was like, I'm going to say what I need to say. I'm going to do what I need to do just to get the goddamn keys to the fucking car so I can go buy myself some fucking Cheetos, because like shit, that for me, it very much felt like, I love you. I'm committed to you. We just need milk. Like, just let me go get the milk. Like, that's how it felt.
Yeah, I think as far as trying to diffuse the situation goes, I thought she did quite well in the sense of, I need to go disengage. I can't engage with this anymore. I need to go relax. I need to calm down. I need to get out of the situation. And the entire time, her body language was quite avoidant. Like, she wanted to, like, she was trying to placate him, but also find the exit. You know, I noticed that quite a lot.
Yeah, she was staying close to the door, and she was kind of circling, almost like the way you would approach a mad dog, almost like very calm and quiet and soothing, and like keeping the distance. Like she was very much just trying to get out of what could have potentially led to an explosive situation. And even the text at the end, where as she was walking away, he was getting angrier and yelled, "I will fuck you up." Like, who says that to somebody?
Who says that to your husband or wife? Like,
Who
I
says
can't
that
imagine
to anybody when you're not like 17 and drunk in a bar fight? Like, that's not how grown adults respond to situations. Like, he is either so accustomed to getting what he wants, or so accustomed to getting a certain type of behavior from her that she is obviously fed up with, otherwise she wouldn't be divorcing him, that he just cannot fathom that somebody would speak to him in that way, because he likely, and I don't know, I mean, being in the public eye the way he is, right, and being the star of his own show, he is likely surrounded by a bunch of lackeys and yes men who give him whatever he wants. So if he was to say to somebody, "Put on gloves and walk the dog," yeah, I'm on your payroll, so I'm going to do that because it's my job. But this is your wife. That's your partner. Like, you don't order your partner around like they're your shitty intern. How you shittily treat your intern.
One thing I noticed though, like the groceries, she actually just to kind of pick apart the conversation a bit, is that she said it's not groceries today, and then he said, "No, but what about the steaks, the wood pellets, my grill?" So he wanted her to go to the grocery store, out of her normal routine, basically, go to the grocery store and pick up his stuff because he wanted to see his friends later, which he can't do if she takes the car. So he wanted to have the car so that he could do his little errands, go to the gym and see his buddies, and then he wanted her to get an Uber to the grocery to pick up his stuff to hang out with his friends later.
I missed that nuance of it. Oh, that's even shittier.
Isn't it? Adds another layer.
It does add another layer. And like, if she's going to, how long does it take for her to go to the grocery? Like, is she going to a farm and churning her own butter? Because it's a grocery store. Like, you're in and out in an hour.
Yeah.
It's not like he couldn't have done these things. It's not like he can't, okay, let's go together. Or, I mean, we have 2 cars in our household, so we don't need to worry about like who's going where. But like, there have been times where one of our cars is in the shop for an extended period of time, and if we both have things to do, we'll figure out, either we'll do those things together, or it's like, okay, I'm going to drop you off here, I'm going to go run this errand, I'll come back and pick you up. Like, when you're in a partnership, you problem solve together. You problem solve, and you try to make things easier for the other person. You don't intentionally try to make things difficult for them.
Exactly. Like the way you just put up barrier after barrier. And but
then that's so whiny. It's not about that either. Like, I cannot get that either, the intonation of the word either, out of my head. That's how I used to talk to my mom when I was 14.
Yeah, and it's everything was focused. I mean, this is quite what matches what I know of him on the Crowder show and the way that his ex-cast members have spoken about him. But it's that ego. Everything was surrounding him. So it was about, she has to be worthy of being his wife. So she needs discipline and respect in order to earn the position as his wife. Because
even at the very beginning, she said, "How do you respect men?" It's how is he respecting her? Like, it's if there's no mutual respect, trust, if there's no open communication, that does not make for a healthy or happy relationship, which is why, we can all see why she left.
Yeah. And I think that as a man watching this as well, like, when I hear blokes, I mean, this is a pretty common thing among blokes who aren't abusive or don't present abusive behaviors to their wives. It's quite common that this kind of stuff should make a man angry. You should feel anger and rage at seeing a bloke treat his wife like that, because it's not fucking necessary. We've got one of my neighbors. He talks to his wife like a piece of shit. I can't fucking stand the bloke. And she was in the garden, like, he was just sitting there on a Sunday, just chilling out, and then his wife was fixing up the garden and doing things. And then she was trying to unscrew something, and he was just so sarcastic. He was like, "Lefty loosey, righty tighty, don't you fucking remember?" And then, so she's doing the thing, and then he's like, "I just wanted one fucking day of the week where I could just fucking relax." She's like, "I know you did, I know, I want to get this done."
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
Like
and
my
it's the
husband
same-
and I will occasionally will be sarcastic with each other like that in a very joking way.
yeah, it's a bit
And
different,
we-
isn't it?
Yeah, and we both know that we're joking. And I think for a lot of men, they sometimes feel emasculated in other places, right? They're made to feel insecure or less than, right? Maybe at work, they're the low man on the totem pole and they get treated like shit. So in order to make themselves feel big, they've got to make somebody else feel small. So this that dynamic of it all kind of trickles downhill. If someone treated them like shit, they're going to treat somebody else like shit, who in turn is going to then treat somebody else like shit, unless there's that eventuality where the cycle is broken and it doesn't continue. But it takes a lot of hard work to break that cycle. And I don't know what Crowder's parents were like, if they were like this as well, or if this was all him. But at some point, the cycle's got to be broken. And that is hopefully what his wife is doing by showing their children, this is not how you behave in a relationship. This is not a healthy dynamic.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I've never thought much of his dad when I saw him on. I wouldn't be surprised if he learnt this. Like, obviously, I don't know this. I don't know what his childhood was like, but it would not surprise me if what he's doing here is parroting his parents.
That's usually the way, right? Someone's got to break it.
And it was because what caused me to think that is that, like, he's had his dad on the show quite a lot, and he always has like a really hard religious conservative mindset. So they were watching a clip, I think, I can't remember what it was about. I think it might have been about an OnlyFans model or some woman who wasn't acting in a very Christian way in their view. And then the dad just went, I know what the problem is. She didn't have a good dad growing up. And then that was it. Like, all of her behavior, everything she is as a person, obviously she doesn't have a dad growing up, and that's why she's a slut.
Wow.
That was his argument. Yeah. Very two-dimensional.
Wow. But I'm sure he fancies himself a good dad.
Yeah, right. So what we're going to watch here is the bit where he was responding to that journalist writing on Substack about all this divorce stuff.
But needed to take a moment here to address some issues out there that are circulating. It's never fun. But, well, I guess let me be clear here. I have been living with a proverbial boot on my neck for going on years now. Since 2021, I've been living through what has increasingly been a horrendous divorce. Now, let me say on the outset, to be clear, there is no infidelity, any kind of physical abuse at all on either side. And no, this was not my choice. My then wife decided that she didn't want to be married anymore. And in the state of Texas, that is completely permitted. It's been the most heartbreaking experience of my life, what I consider to be my deepest personal failure. And just so you know, my opinions on parenting and families have not changed. I've always believed that children need a mom and a dad, that divorce is horrible. And I still believe that children need a mom and a dad and that divorce is horrible. But in today's legal system, my beliefs don't matter. In Texas, divorce is permitted when one party wants it, period. So for well over a year, in the best interest, as well as physical safety of my children, we've decided to keep this issue private and to resolve it privately with the appropriate attorneys, what have you, legal jargon. And all this, one thing I want to be really clear about is certain. True north here is that my children are blameless, completely without fault, and so we decided to resolve these issues privately, as it's in their best interests, both emotionally and physically, to do so. Now, the other issue is, and this is something that I've kept private for likely far too long, many other people knew about this behind the scenes. Some, not all, but some of them in positions of power, influence, leverage, knew of this.
Okay, that's a good place, yeah.
Yeah, because the rest of it is, he goes on, basically for the listeners, he goes on to basically accuse Candace Owens of trying to extort him and like subliminally trying to say, I'm going to tell everyone all about this if you don't act nicer to the Daily Wire. I wouldn't put it past Candace Owens to do that because she's a piece of shit, but...
but that's not what we're here to talk about.
No.
May I?
Yeah.
So he goes, I cannot get over his choice of phrasing that he has had a boot on his neck for several years since 2021. But like, how long has your wife had your boot on her neck? Like, It's been long. He talks about he's going through a horrendous divorce, which he's made it a horrendous divorce, likely, because she wanted a divorce. All he had to do was sign the paperwork, agree to some custody, and it could have been done. It didn't need to be horrendous. He's made it that way. He very specifically says there's no infidelity or physical abuse. Emotional and mental and verbal. That's par for the course, but there was no physical abuse. And my wife doesn't want to be married anymore. To you. Divorce is horrible. And that one, like, I get where he's coming from because he has that religious conservative background. But what is, like, yes, I think children, as he says, need a mom and a dad. They'll still have a mom and a dad. They just won't live in the same house anymore. And hopefully the mom and dad will both be happy independently instead of miserable together, which is better for your children than seeing miserable mom and dad.
Yeah.
I think a lot of kids who, you never know what's on the other side of the coin, right? Like my parents stayed together until my dad passed away, but there were a lot of times when I was a teenager that I thought it would be better if they just divorced, because then we wouldn't have to be raised in that household of kind of fear and discomfort and what's dad going to do, what's going to happen. Whereas people who are children of divorce may have thought like, well, my parents should have just sucked it up and stayed together for the kids. So you never know what the other side of the coin looks like, but every child, I think, would agree that they would rather their parents be happy, whether that's happy together or happy apart. They'd want to see their parents happy and healthy, and demonstrating good examples of healthy relationships where their children weren't seeing that. And then he still goes on about like the whole one party in Texas. That again, it comes back to like, I cannot believe I cannot keep somebody against their will.
It does have that subtext.
I can't keep a hostage in my household. What is the world coming to? And I think, I don't know why this one kind of landed with me tickled my taint a little bit when he goes on about how the children are blameless. And I think that's always the case, right? Children, like, I know children tend to blame themselves in terms of divorce, but they're never really the cause for the divorce. But the fact that he goes so deep into that, like, my children are blameless, kind of feels like in his head, he doesn't really believe it. Like, it didn't come across to me as genuine. And it may very well be, it just didn't come across as being genuine. Because as far as he was living his best life, right? He had his kids, he had his dog, he had his barbecue, he had his friends coming over, he had this big house, he had a wife who was subservient. So like, he doesn't believe, I don't think he believes that he was to blame in this. So he's probably like, fucking kids, but I'm just going to tell the world my kids were. I mean, that's a big leap and a bound I'm making, but when how much he focused on it felt a little,
I notice this a lot when people do these kind of public declarations like this. Like they try and pull the emotional heartstrings. You know, it's emotional manipulation. That there was no need to talk about his kids because they're so young. They're basically newborns or toddlers almost. So like, why? They're only like a year old. So you don't need to mention them. And then to repeatedly bring in this whole idea of his children's physical safety. Yeah, like what's that got to do with any of it? Like,
I think he's trying to garner sympathy.
Yeah,
that's how it feels.
Yeah, so he's trying to do it's like an anchor effect. So if he mentions his kid's safety is at risk, in his view, then my kids are blameless, their safety is at risk. Now look what Candace Owens has done. So or
even in this case, like still going back to his wife.
Yeah.
It could still go back to his wife, and that like the kids were blameless and they're not going to be safe anymore. And it's because my wife is like choosing to divorce me that they're not safe. Like there's a couple ways you could look at that.
Yeah, it's like two different ways. I definitely think that for sure the thing with the Candace thing is like, because it's quite a tactic that they do quite a lot. But I think there might be a subtext there with what you just said, that like his wife divorcing him is putting his child's physical safety at risk because he can't be there.
He's the protector and the provider. Who's going to protect them now that he's not there?
That's true. Yeah, because that would fit with his views, his politics. You know, it's he's very he's I mean, I support the Second Amendment myself, but he's really into it.
There's a difference between supporting the Second Amendment and making it your entire personality.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I just think, particularly with how bad the police are in the UK, I'm concerned for people's safety, particularly women's safety in the UK at the moment. Like, I don't know how much you know, about what fucking shit's going down, but there's like 1,900 abuse allegations by the Met Police on women. So we got that last video to look at where he, you found this one on Reddit. And so just for transparency to the viewers, I can't find the actual original. So this could be an AI generated program for all I fucking know.
Hopefully it's not.
No. But yeah, so all of the text on that screen, I didn't write that. For the solicitors.
I commented on my ongoing divorce on Tuesday, requesting privacy in the best interest of the family, but also by court order agreed upon by all parties. Look, broken marriages are ugly, and in them people do ugly things. Myself, of course included, I would never claim otherwise. However, due to recent misleadingly edited leaks to the tabloid press without context and not subject to consequences of the court, well, if not privacy, the next best option is truth. So today, I have filed a motion to officially unseal all files as they relate to the matter of legal record. Finances, relevant medical records, including mental health history or evaluations, depositions, and any motions or sanctions from the courts of Texas. I will not be leaking private marital information to the press, but if the privacy agreements are not respected by all parties, I will address all that is a matter of irrefutable legal record in full context next week.
Woo.
That was very threatening.
Yeah.
That was like, I'm requesting privacy. I'm going to leak a whole bunch of private shit if this doesn't happen. Like, that was very much him speaking to his wife, his ex-wife, which is shitty. Like,
and the Daily Wire, I think he's also, there's all of this stuff is wrapped up together. So I think there's a lot of people individually that he's threatening there. And the fact that he specifically mentioned not releasing private marital stuff, but then heavily implying that he would leak her personal stuff that isn't to do with the marriage.
Yeah, because finances and mental health records.
Yeah, but like that could also apply to anybody in Daily Wire as well.
Not necessarily. He wouldn't have access to anybody else's mental health records.
But he might do. Private investigators, he has a lot of money, and also he records, he's very well known. Like Dave Landau has gone on record to say this on the podcast the other day, that Crowder routinely records his phone conversations with people. And then, that's what he did to Daily Wire, was that even though I think in the Daily Wire contract debacle, I think Crowder was right about the contract, but he released a private conversation between him and the co-owner of Daily Wire. And he just put it out there in the internet.
I know that there are some places where the legalities around recording are different. Like in some, as long as one person knows there's a recording, one party consent, which...
Yeah. I think Texas is one party consent, but it's grubby. It's skullduggery.
It is. It's shitty behavior.
Yeah, basically.
But he's now, he's fighting, like he's hitting below the belt now.
Yeah, it's pretty dirty. And it's just like the rapid escalation as well. Like obviously, from his perspective, he's been dealing with this for like 2 years. But from the viewers, the audience's perspective, we're dealing with it for a week. So to us, this looks like a rapid escalation. And I wish he had people in his life just to tell him, just calm the fuck down, dude. Like, just reel it back a bit. You're going to burn any bridge and any hope you ever had of getting your wife back. You're ruining all of your friendships with everyone around you because you're on this self-destructive path.
But also getting the wife back, that ship has likely sailed. But like, what example are you setting for your children? Because this shit is going to be out there forever, and they're going to be seeing this forever. They're going to like always have this record of you threatening to release their mother's mental health records. They're going to always see this video of you being threatening and shitty to their mother. Like, and the unfortunate part is, depending on who has a greater influence on their children, their children could be raised to blame their mom, or they could side with their mom, right? There's going to be,
or it could cause animosity between them.
Exactly. Like, it's going to be a very difficult situation for those kids to navigate, because there's always going to be kids who are like, no, dad was right, women should step in line, or dad is a piece of shit, mom was the victim here. Like, you don't know how this is going to play out. It's playing out not well in the court of public opinion, and that always is going to trickle down into the family.
And I think that as well, like, because divorce, I think, is necessary because it helps abused people get out of relationships, and it stops them being abused. So it goes for men and women. It works both ways. But the reason why divorce is a bad process and it's horrendous to go through like this is because the people make it bad. Like, I just remember when my mum and my stepdad got divorced, and the shit mum put us through. Like, my stepdad just wanted to get on with his life and just be like, look, here's our custody, you've got the kids, I'll come and see them, that's all fine. But for the next sort of like 10 years, until my sister was 18, there was just like, she'd have my sister on the phone talking to my dad, relaying messages, and all this other shit. And it's like, we were happier with them apart. We just didn't want to live with my mum.
And it doesn't have to be like you said, there's a woman I know, her husband cheated on her.
Yeah.
Her husband initiated the divorce and then spent the next decade making it difficult for her, making her continually go back into the courts, constantly fighting things. And because he actually said to her, I would rather, because she was fighting to get like half, like she wanted to split all of their assets 50-50, and he didn't want to give her anything. And she's like, listen, we were married. All these assets came while we were married. It's only fair. And he kept throwing up these roadblocks. And he actually said to her, I would rather lose all of that money to legal fees than have 1 cent get into your pocket.
Jeez.
And he cheated on her. Like, he was the one who, it could have been a clean break. It could have been, I've met this other person. I don't want to be with you anymore. We'll sell the house and get half. Here's half of this, here's half of that, or let's walk away with what we came in with. Like, it could have been easy, but it's still not resolved. He continues to make it difficult just out of spite or pettiness, where that was someone you used to love. Like,
yeah. You built a life with that person and now you're ruining theirs.
Yeah.
Fuck that. What a prick. And so we're talking about like Crowder's ego and stuff. And then like, this is one of the times that I think it came out in spades. Like, I was like, that's it. You didn't like what that guy just said. So have you ever heard of a journalist called John Stossel? Okay, he works on Reason TV mostly, I think. And he's an investigative journalist from way back in the day, and he's a libertarian. And so I'll watch quite a bit of his stuff because I think he's really good. But anyway, he's interviewing Crowder on Stossel's podcast. And then Stossel's just talking about the kind of humor that Crowder does. And he gave some feedback to Crowder, which Crowder obviously didn't like. But it's just the way that Crowder responds to it.
The one that got you in trouble recently is your comments about $5 billion going to farmers of color.
Most happy about the new policy, these people. I'm gonna buy a plow, man. I'm gonna plant that corn. Go get a John Deere. Barack Obama, mother, I'm the president of plowing that ass. Yeah, that was a joke where we did an impression of people from, and again, keep in mind the context of that joke. There's a big difference. People should be able to understand this. For example, when Trevor Noah goes out and says, the rise in anti-Asian hate crimes because of calling it the China virus and angry white people. That's a claim. That's not a joke. I differentiate between that claim and when he makes a joke. And even if I don't find it funny, I have to acknowledge that it's a joke. When me and my co-host Dave Landau are talking about the irony in that white suburbans have moved, or white rural people have moved into downtown Detroit to urban farm, and we're supposed to believe that the inverse has happened. And again, we talked about the numbers of how many people in this country are black farmers proportionally to the number allotted to them. Then we go into an impression of hipsters in Detroit and Detroit African Americans living out on farms. It's a fish out of water tale. It's funny.
But the way
it's absolutely not.
It was mean, nasty. I don't blame YouTube for saying, I don't want this on our channel.
No, I thought you had a better sense of humor than that.
Okay.
A joke should be funny.
Yeah.
That was not a joke. That was flat out racism. If he had numbers to support what he was saying about the number, like a disproportionate number of black farmers versus, right? So if he's got the numbers, he could have presented those numbers in a way that was factual and the way that was actually not douchebaggy.
Yeah,
but he just took that opportunity to be a racist and do a racist impression and then tried to defend it by saying it's a joke, you had a better sense of humor. Go fuck yourself. That's not funny ever to anybody. The only people that's funny to are other fucking racists.
Yeah. And this is the thing, is that his whole spiel with his whole argument is about how like, well, it's free speech, you're about to say what you want. And then he doesn't think it's punching down and stuff like that. Like, I don't really think punching down exists in that sense. There's well-intentioned jokes and there's bad intentioned jokes. Like, that had a touch of malevolence and racism to it, in my view. Obviously, I can't say what he intended. Like, speaking as a psychologist now, I don't know what he intended because I don't know his mind. I just know that when he does those jokes, they make me really fucking uncomfortable and I feel racist even watching it.
I mean, there's also like well-intentioned jokes that don't land the way you expect them to.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing. He knew exactly who he was talking to and who his audience was. And that's a very specific type of it's the same people who were shooting up Bud Light.
Yeah,
right?
Kid
Like,
Rock.
that the person who would laugh at that joke is shooting up a Bud Light can. So he knew what he was doing. He just didn't like being called out on it. And instead of saying, you know what, I could see how that, instead of taking any sort of ownership or accountability, he was just like gaslighting. Oh, I thought you had a better sense of humor than that.
Yeah.
Trying to make.
And then just to show people like that we do have a sense of humor. And then it's about where it comes from, right? So I fucking love Shane Gillis. He's one of my favorite ones at the moment. So I've got an autistic joke of his that we can laugh at because I'm autistic, so we can laugh at this joke. This is a fucking good joke, though, honestly. And considering your best friend's autistic, it should hit home for you.
Does that mean I'm allowed to laugh too?
Yeah.
Down syndrome? All right. I'll do that. That was not my suggestion. But I will say this. I like it. I'm pro it. I have family members that have it. It's fun.
All of that's true, by the way. He used to coach a Down syndrome basketball team. That's why he talks about it. And he does have family members with Down syndrome. So...
Down syndrome. There's a new Barbie coming out that has Down syndrome.
Oh, we're going to be speaking about that in a minute too. I've got a clip for that.
That is weird because everybody's always like, oh, it's the best thing you could be. They're happy as fuck, dude. They have the best life. Dude, autistic kids, they're like cats. A little skittish. You're not sure if they like you at all. Down syndrome are dogs. They're the dogs, dude. You get home from somewhere, they're like, where the fuck have you been, dude? I got so much to show you. This is gonna be the best day. Ask a Down syndrome kid, do you want to go for a walk? Like, yeah. Like, throw a ball.
When I did that kick-ass facts about Down syndrome, every source that I found, because I do research the stuff that I do. I went to multiple sources and all of the sources said that like 96% of people with Down syndrome said that they would not change a thing. They were super happy. Like they were happier than the average person.
Yeah. It's a very misunderstood thing. And I hate the fact that there's a lot of people being activists on their behalf in areas where they can speak for themselves. You know?
Yes, and there's certainly areas where they do need some. There's not enough health supports. There's not enough programs, so there's lots of opportunities there. But I think everyone just assumes that nobody else can speak for themselves, which is unfortunate. But the difference in that joke was that it was positive. It was speaking from a place of clearly of knowledge and appreciation and love.
Yeah.
Whereas Crowder's was just coming from a mean. He was just coming from a mean place.
Yeah, and then this is the thing with the Down syndrome Barbie, right? That like my initial knee-jerk reaction was, oh, this is going to be cringe. About the idea of like, I hate it when companies try and do like a representation thing. But then I thought about it for more than 30 seconds. And I was like, no, actually, this is something that Down syndrome kids would fucking love.
Exactly, right? Like it's like, I could think back to those videos of when when young Black girls were seeing the commercials for the new Little Mermaid, and they were just like, she looks like me, right? Like that excitement and enthusiasm. Like any kid would love a doll that looks like them. Like I had a doll when I was a kid that came from Portugal that was like dressed in traditional Portuguese garb, and I fucking loved that doll because they didn't have, at the time, they didn't have like Portuguese Barbie, but it's not clothing that I wore. It wasn't the culture that I was accustomed to, but it was just
like your heritage.
Yeah. And so like a young kid with Down syndrome having a doll that looks like them, and that's amazing. That's amazing.
It is. Well then, do you want to listen to the resident party pooper talk about it?
No. No. I wanted to end on a positive note.
Oh, it will do. After this bit, we'll talk about something good that he's done just to round it off.
Okay.
But no, this is... Tell me when to stop, because I don't know when to stop the clip. It's 3 minutes long.
Okay.
At one point, you would have thought this was a sketch. So Barbie, Mattel, in order to boost inclusivity, just announced... And at one point, you would have thought this was a sketch. All references are available for you at Lido'sCreditor.com. This is real. They just announced the release. I feel bad even saying it. Down syndrome Barbie.
Yes. We can stop it there for a second. We may go back to it. The fact that he thinks inclusivity is a bad thing is very telling. And that he says, I feel bad saying it. He feels bad saying that, like, you only feel bad saying it if you think it's some sort of slur or some sort of insult instead of that's just what it is.
Yeah.
Like, he would never refer, like, heaven forbid any of his children were born with Down syndrome, because you already know what his perspective on that would be. But if he feels bad saying it, it's because he thinks it's this profound disability or this thing to be pitied or looked down upon, when
it's not.
It's absolutely not. It is absolutely not. And like, you know, in a bid to be inclusive, oh no, inclusivity is a bad thing. Sorry, that not everybody can be some like white nationalist douche. Making me mad. Like, honestly, what kind of person thinks that inclusivity is a bad thing? What kind of person says, like, no, we should absolutely exclude people because these people are garbage? He's the kind of asshole that says, like, I'm not racist, I have a Black friend, but his Black friend is actually his driver that he doesn't know his first name.
I do think, like, what his intention there, I think, is, if one may assume that, is that he's against, like, a lot of the forced inclusivity. You know, like the stuff we see on Netflix, like they've just got fucking Black Cleopatra when Cleopatra was Greek, you know, like that forced representation. But
I don't think this is an example of that.
No. So what I think is that it's the classic religious conservative talk show thing that they do, where they, we said this on the episode we released last, which is that they take one group and they lump everything into that group. Even though they're cherry picking the most extreme, crazy examples, and they're saying that the whole group is like it. So in this instance where we have a positive piece of inclusivity that is very good for a lot of people, like, because kids are going to have to look up now, what is Down syndrome? They're going to have to learn about it. Like, oh, I know that kid down the road's got Down syndrome. I should go talk to him.
Yeah, and kids with Down syndrome are going to have a doll that looks like them, a doll that represents who they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I almost feel bad for, like, boys with Down syndrome because they don't typically play with Barbie, so they're going to have to come out with, like, a Ken doll that has Down syndrome as well, so the boys will be excluded. Exactly. So does he go on to say even more amazing?
Oh no, I think we've. I don't think it would add anything more to the discussion. I think we hit the nail on the head, and we don't have to. But I think that there's because where everybody's complicated and stuff. Like all of these bad things doesn't stop him from sometimes having a point. You know, there is like plenty of times where he's opened up my eyes about something that I had no fucking clue about before. Like, because the media, there's a lot of stuff that they just don't report on, and you'll never know it fucking happened. Like, there was this white guy who was executing people for being Republican, or he'd see them wearing a red hat, a MAGA hat, and then the victim he got arrested for was like he drove off the road, run this kid over. I think it was a teenager because he had a MAGA hat on.
Jesus.
Yeah, media doesn't report that. But they'll report for days about Rittenhouse. And
that's the thing about all of, like, when you've made your entire personality one thing, right? Like, he has made his his whole platform about his politics, his religion, his conservatism. So he's very fully invested in maintaining that appearance. So getting divorced kind of shatters this whole projection that he's had, which is perhaps why he's taken it so personally, because it's not just his family breakdown, but it's his public image breakdown. And the challenge of when people are so aggressively one way is that you lose those nuggets of goodness that come out of them, right? It's like we talked about this before with Andrew Tate and others of his ilk. They do occasionally make really valid points about the lack of support in men's mental health and where men need to seek out that support. They make those really amazing points, but it just gets so lost in the shuffle of like, make your bitches clean your house, right? Like there's that lack of balance where their centrist perspectives are so good, but then the extreme is just so extreme, you forget all that, the nuggets of good stuff that he says. And like, there's nothing to say that you can't be balanced, right? Like you can have perspectives on both. You can be conservative in one aspect of your life, but liberal in another aspect of your life. Like you don't have to define yourself in just that one way, because there's people who are fiscally conservative and socially liberal, and other people are environmentally moderate. Like there's just, to just cubbyhole yourself into that one thing then makes that breakdown of it even more, right? Like how many religious people are watching Steven Crowder and they follow what he says, and then that fact that he's getting divorced and be like, well, if he can't keep it together, what hope do the rest of us have? Like you can't hitch your saddle to that one horse and expect it to ride you all the way to the end. People are multifaceted, and you never know what's going on in somebody's life and how they project themselves. Like his on-screen personality being as abrasive and aggressive as it is, it's not, if he would be able to turn that off and then be loving and kind at home, you know, that's a very distinct person. So you kind of feel like, yeah, he's like that at home. He's going to be that same abrasiveness and that same aggressive personality at home. And that would be difficult to live with. The fact that his wife was 8 months pregnant when she decided to seek a divorce is very telling, because like she just had enough. Couldn't do it for herself, couldn't fathom bringing another child into that type of household. Like that level of toxicity, and to go through that, the stress of a divorce, the stress of that while you're 8 months pregnant, that's very telling that she didn't just wait or do it sooner. Like she just had enough.
Yeah, I think in that argument that was going on there, I think that there was a lot of little nuggets in there. I think if I was going into proper analytical mode, there's a lot of little bits and pieces that tells you a lot about the relationship, the kind of arguments that they might usually have, the way those arguments turn out. And I think that, and certainly if I combine that with what's reflected in the way the show's gone on, the kind of people that have left Louder with Crowder over the years, and how he's ended up with a bunch of yes men who don't really contribute anything to the show, and they'll just do whatever Crowder says, and all the really good quality people have left over the years because he had animosity with them or whatever happened behind the scenes. And so you get into this point where the culmination of that is the Ring video, that he's obviously a guy with a big ego, but front men like this who are doing the front of a show and they're the face and name of the show, they do have big egos. But if you don't have that balance of people keeping your ego in check and humbling you from time to time, then eventually you get a bit, I don't know, it sends you a bit crazy.
And I think we see that a lot with like we've talked about this before, where like child stars kind of tend to go off the rails because there's no one there to say no to them. And if people who were saying no to him or having opposing views have left the show because it was the environment they didn't like anymore, and he has then surrounded himself with yes men, then of course that's just going to continue to grow his ego, that when someone does say no, it would be a shock to the system, because how dare, do you know who I am? Like he seems like that kind of, do you know who I am kind of guy.
And it is kind of like, because I don't buy into hero worship, so you know, this doesn't damage my sense of identity. But I feel sorry for all the guys out there watching this, where Crowder's done really good advice on like dating, finding a suitable partner. One of his best bits of advice I've ever seen for men's mental health is like, if you've got a man in your life, just give him an attaboy sometimes. That's all he needs. It's like, we don't need praise and worship. We just need somebody just to go, hey, you're doing a good job, keep it up. And that's all you fucking need.
And that's the thing, is that if he'd kept himself grounded, and if he didn't lose sight of that, then maybe he wouldn't be where he is, right? Like if your whole show and your income is based on a certain personality, at some point that stops becoming an act and that becomes who you are. And it's, we forget that there's still a person there who lost the love of his life, right? Like he may have genuinely loved his wife and his children, and he loved his family, he loved all of that, and that's over, and that's heartbreaking, right? Because nobody wants, like, I'm not happy that he's getting a divorce because he's a douchebag, right? Because nobody deserves to have their heart broken and deserves to have their life ruined in that way. But at some point, you've got to take a look back, because no divorce is fully no fault. Like
something's
if
happened.
If one person is seeking a divorce, it's not because they just decided, I don't want to be married anymore, I'm out. That may happen from time to time, but that's not the case. It's usually that, like, the death of 1,000 cuts, where just eventually she got to her breaking point. Maybe they could have resolved it sooner, maybe they could have, but maybe he wasn't receptive to that, right? You see him, the way he receives feedback on a racist joke, he doubles down on it and gaslights, where had he been more open to perhaps feedback, had he been more open having a partnership, it wouldn't be to where they are now. But like, his wife just got to her breaking point, and it's tragic because his life has been upended, and he really believed that this was going to be forever, and that's a sad thing. And you wouldn't want anybody to go through that. But
I think in terms of closing thoughts, we've got 2 minutes left. I think that the other than the actual footage itself, which was really difficult to watch, the other bit that has really fucking grossed me out is the way that all the people around him that don't like him, and they'll have their little podcasts and their little independent news shows, the way they're gleefully enjoying it. And it's like, 2 people here have lost the love of their life. They've
children have been like,
children have been separated from their father. It's fucking tragic what's happened, regardless of who's at fault, regardless of what's happened. These people have been through, like, the fucking ringer, and these other people, like Sam Seder and all that, he's such a fucking cunt. Can't stand him. He loves his own voice. Do you ever get those people where they're just talking and you can just tell they're just talking because they love listening to themselves?
Yeah.
Sam, fuck you. I have to have a job keeping you quiet.
Well, that's the thing. And, like, the people who were taking so much joy in this, like, they better hope nothing happens to them down the road. Because, like, say what you will about Steven Crowder, like him or don't like him, he's going through a shitty time. He may not have handled it the best way possible. His wife may not have handled it the best way possible, but it's still, someone is going through a publicly shitty time. They deserve some compassion, even if they're not ones who were quick to dole it out.
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't have to act the same way someone else acts just because they did it.
Exactly.
Be the better person.
Exactly.
Fade to black.